you're gonna hate this, and then you're
Hmm.
gonna hate me even more. So, fucking Charlie Cox is gonna be at a convention here where I am in my state.
Awesome.
Um, but I'm not gonna get anything signed by him because I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna get something signed by Nolan North.
Mm. All right, here we go. There's probably going to be some echo, but that is just PlayStation in a fucking nutshell. All right, here we go. Tag everyone. And staying hydrated.
Just a key reminder that Netflix is low key stupid because I mean I don't look. I know that Daredevil you'd have to pay a lot of people and all that shit,
Hmm.
but is it really more expensive than Stranger Things? I mean, a show that uses full CGI and all this other stuff versus a show that's already like pretty grounded in terms of its characters. Is it really more expensive?
And for what I recall, Daredevil was made on a tight budget as well.
Basically the reason why Netflix canceled it was because it, like, in their eyes, and this is mainly just a little thing here. A lot of the time in shows, mainly kind of more now, I guess, because we're in an era where a lot of shows get canned after like a season or two, despite how
Yep.
good they might be. Well, then also people want to support fucking garbage because they want to see how bad it is.
Hate watching you.
Just just know that people are rationally trying to defend the old Mario movie, which was so bad, the actors pretty much decided to get intoxicated on set. There is no defending that movie, especially after hearing that news. It's like, if your thing is that bad, then it's just that bad. There is no, it's so bad it's good in that example.
I also saw people discussing the older Mario movie in discussion with the that new Super Mario Bro. I haven't seen it, but I've seen people talk about it in relation to the new Super Mario Bro. Galaxy or
It's
whatever.
like, I'm not even going to draw that movie Bob ass comparison. I'm not even going to do that.
Yep. So we'll give it a minute. Maybe give people a bit of time to pop in. But even if no one pops in, we can still get this.
I'll say this though.
Yep.
Either side I'm seeing about this fucking movie is like people, like critics being like, man, this shit was so bad, I tried to summon Satan. And then people who watched it, they were like, oh, this was so fun, I shat myself. It's like, dude, can I look at one review of this movie and not see someone overreacting on either side of the fucking spectrum?
I know those ones. I know those
Like,
ones.
I just want to watch the movie and form my own damn opinion. And I can't believe I'm going to defend this part. But I'll just say this. Supposedly, Star Fox has more screen time than Rosalina. And I'm like, dude, let Fox have his moment. This man hasn't gotten anything in a decade. Like, if it was different circumstances, I would kind of agree that that's, bullshit. But it's Star Fox. He hasn't gotten anything in a decade. Like, let the man have his screen time.
Wasn't that nigga in Super Smash Bros? Or am I thinking of a
Not
different character?
including crossovers or remakes, because Fox's only thing in like the past few years has just been beaten in Smash. Same with Captain Falcon. He hasn't gotten fucking anything outside of Smash. Plus, Smash is a party game, so not including any of that.
Fucking ginger turmeric tea. All right. That's as clear as my throat's gonna get. Let's get on with it. So, hello everyone.
That's what
I'm your
she said.
Yep, I am your host, Daredevil. With me today I have Shodomaru, once again, one of the collaborators on the previous stream. And as the title suggests, we are going to be playing through Mortal Kombat X's story mode. It's going to be structured the exact same way as the last stream. We're going to Yes, Zeku, drop your PSN in the chat if you want to, if you want to fucking speak your piece on anything that we say. But yeah, the way that this stream is going to be structured is that we're going to spend some time speaking about Daredevil Born Again, then we're going to talk on T8 a little bit, then I'm going to play through the awesome, well-written, great made, completely the absolute cinematic story mode of MKX. So I'm really excited. So, going into Daredevil, I guess the best way to approach this Born Again discussion, I guess, because you said, Shotomaru, that you don't remember that much about the Netflix show, or that you don't have that deep
Well,
of
yeah,
a
because I
connection.
watched it
Yeah.
like way long ago. Back when I think it was like I began watching it right when um season 3 was airing, and by
Hmm.
that point I was like what 12 pretty much. I was like what 12, 13 maybe.
Hmm.
And obviously I'm 20 now. I'm not gonna remember a whole bunch of shit from that time period.
Unless you
Um,
rewatched it in full, yeah.
yeah, and then I remember watching like the only two Netflix shows I even did watch, if I'm gonna be completely honest,
Hmm.
was Daredevil, The Punisher, and then like a bit of Iron Fist, but they butchered Iron
Yeah.
Fist.
Yeah, from what I heard, yeah. I have one of those typical histories with
The
Cook. No,
show
Cook.
butchered the fuck out. Yeah, sorry. But the show butchered the fuck out of me to the point where Danny Rand is pretty much just being erased from history to an extent. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I remember hearing about that.
You'll probably see him as a skin in Rivals or something, and to that I say fair enough. But like, you won't be seeing a lot of Danny Rand in the near future because of that show.
Yeah, from what I was told, he's apparently going to show up in Born Again at some point. The all of the defenders are apparently going to show up in Born Again, but that's
People
for
think
season 2.
People think that Mark from Invincible is a jobber. No, Danny Rand in that show is a jobber.
Invincible. But yeah, when it comes to my history with Daredevil, I have one of those typical histories. I watched the Netflix show back in 2015 when it had initially came out, and I loved every single second of it. But back in 2015, I was still in fucking elementary at the time, so I wasn't able to truly understand what made that show so good. But I watched it at a point in time when a lot of superhero content was getting canceled. We had just lost Spectacular Spider-Man, we lost the Batman, we lost Brave and the Bold. We had also lost at that point in time fucking what's that shit, Teen Titans and Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. So a lot of the shows that I grew up loving were just getting canned left and right. So the only superhero content we had was the live action stuff. So, and this was at a point in time in 2012 when the MCU was just, getting it, becoming a mainstream brand, and they made the
Also,
Avengers from C tier characters to A tier characters. Yep, go ahead, Cook.
two things. One, I might offend EMH fans, and I'll say this: while the show is good, the fan base needs to pipe the fuck down. Because my thing with EMH is like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like it's good and you like it, but you're ashamed to even be a fan of it because the fandom of EMH is like insanely
Hold
toxic.
on, give me a sec.
To where if you don't blaze the EMH version promotion over any other version, then they'll get mad at you. Or if you correct them on one like thing in the show, they get mad at you. Like someone pointed out that technically Vision's origin in the show isn't comic accurate, and then they just decided to bombard that person. That or just EMH fans will try to like start up controversy with MCU fans for no reason outside of I think my show is better. Or they'll just pretty much pull a random character from the show and be like, man, the MCU butchered them. And it's like a character that only appeared for like, or like what, characters that only appeared for like, what, 1 or 2 episodes?
All right, sorry about that.
I, I
Yeah,
was just going on about EMH fans and
yeah, I
how bad
overheard.
they really.
But yeah, that at that point in time, I was going back to my history with Daredevil. I was watching it at a point where a lot of superhero, in simple terms, a lot of superhero content was getting canceled, and the only thing we had was the MCU and the Flash at the time. When I still thought, season 1 and 2, when everyone and their mother thought that show was really well
We
written.
are the Flash.
Yeah. So Daredevil I didn't truly appreciate it up until I got older, around my high school and college years when I started to break down writing a lot more. But it helped me appreciate writing. It's what made me realize. It's what helped me appreciate Spider-Man 1 and 2 compared to Spider-Man 3. And while I'm still able to love Spider-Man 3 and the memories that movie gave me, um, it's from a writing standpoint, it's completely weaker compared to Spider-Man 1 and 2. But
You could blame Avi or Rat, but that's a story for another time.
oh yeah, absolutely. But essentially, that's my history with Daredevil in a nutshell. And on a personal level, I'd say the show helped me process a lot of my own anger and just dealing, as Matt's arc in season 3, him learning to
Yeah,
overcome
he
his
made the
fear.
actual suit.
Yeah, him learning to overcome his fear and understanding why the bad things in his life happens and how it ultimately was a net good and it made him stronger for it. And yeah, that's essentially my history with Netflix's Daredevil. And unfortunately, season 3 did get canceled. Season 4 and beyond did get canceled, but it was in a unique position to other shows compared to, like, it wasn't a spectacular Spider-Man situation to where they had a lot more that they wanted to do, but they just couldn't do it. Right. It wasn't a spectacular Spider-Man or a reboot situation or what else? Danny Phantom, to where the show got butchered in its final season and they weren't able to do what they wanted to do. They were able to close off the story in a satisfying way, even if there were still some lingering plot threads, like Melvin Potter
Yeah, and
getting
they also
arrested and
did want to
Bullseye coming
introduce.
back. Cook.
Yeah, and they did want to obviously go through with the whole Bullseye thing. They also like wanted to do. I don't know how they would have done it in the Netflix kind of style, because obviously the Netflix show is kind of a lot more grounded
Hmm.
to an extent, because obviously the Netflix show still takes place in the MCU, but it's just in a little corner.
Yeah, it's self-contained.
Because I mean, people will argue, but all I have to say to that is Matt references Thor. Like, what more do you want me
Yeah, I
to
mean,
say?
yeah, they mentioned
If
Iron
he's
Man
referencing,
and
if he's referencing the fucking blonde guy who could throw a lightning hammer at Mach 50, eh, well, then it's canon to the MCU. I'm sorry. Um,
I'd say it was a lot more self-contained. It was one of those cases to where I'd say this is a really good way to put it. So the old school Dragon Ball movies like Fusion
yep.
Reborn, and it was one of those cases to where it references those events, but even if it's not directly connected to those, if that makes sense. So it's like it takes place in the same universe.
Except to be fair, the old DBZ movies are not really canon.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
technically, I mean, like with Fusion Reborn, if you just remove the Earth part, if you just remove the whole, villains like that are dead coming to Earth, and,
Yeah, coming to Earth
just
thing, yeah.
getting just jobbed out the characters, then it would technically kind of fit within canon. You could pretty much argue that if you just remove that point in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. But with all that being said, we now have. Do you think the superhero genre is getting worse? Uh,
Um, I would say yes and no to an extent. I would say, um,
I'd say writing.
yes,
I'd say writing wise,
writing, yes and
a lot
no.
of
It
things
kind
are
of
just getting worse.
depends
But yeah, you can
because
cook.
I would say, while it's not some things, while it's not as strong as it was, there are still some strong things. Like Wonder Man, that was surprisingly good.
Invincible
Like
season
that
one.
was a surprisingly good show. Thunderbolts was surprisingly good as well. And this
Invincible
coming from a
season
guy
one.
who actually really likes Sentry. Um, then also, I think Brand New Day will still do good. I think a big reason, I mean, I think it's just because a lot of studios tried to cash in on that, but they didn't really go through with the actual writing that the prior things did. And then also, it's like Marvel was at a point where it's like, hey, we could just drop this and people would watch it. And there was a whole bunch of things also going on in the studios at the time, um, especially with Kevin Feige. Not really anything too big, literally just the man being stressed out and all that shit. I will say this though, one reason, and I don't even want to sound like a blazer, but I feel like one reason why the MCU gets a lot more flack now is just because there are more alternatives to
To
the
superhero content, yeah,
MCU,
absolutely.
yes. And not to say that things that they release now are good. I mean, well, fucking, I like Moon Knight, but I can understand why a lot of people didn't like that show. I wasn't too big on She-Hulk at fucking all.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'd
um,
say it's when you put it in that lens, I'd say you can compare it to how when we were getting the CW Arrowverse shows. that we thought that was the gold standard for what superhero content could be. But as it got challenges such as
Yeah,
Avengers or
like, and the
Daredevil,
way I
we
can,
started to see
yeah,
that writing can be better and that those shows really aren't that good.
yeah, like, while, and I'll say this, um, like back in the day, because of things like EMH getting canceled, or Spectacular Spider-Man, or a bunch of other things outside of, other studios' controls,
Teen
to
Titans.
kind of get your superhero fix, you would kind of have to go to the MCU,
Hmm.
because it was like DC's not doing good at all right now. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, right
because
now
we
they're
had
doing
just lost.
way better.
Yeah, we
They're
just
doing,
lost the Nolan verse, right? So, and we were gonna get the
yeah,
Snyderverse, and
and
that
also
that
not to
did not go well.
mention, yeah, and not to mention, I mean, DC, while they're in the good spot now, and I'm sure Supergirl is going to be a pretty good movie, um, like for a while, DC had never really been able to do what Marvel had been doing. And back then, you kind of had to go to the MCU for your superhero fix.
Mm.
And The Boys by this time was still like, it was popular, but it was kind of like not too popular. But thanks to things like The Boys growing in popularity and Invincible growing in popularity, there's a lot more alternatives per se,
Mm.
especially now with the DCU, and hopefully Paramount doesn't fucking butcher anything with that. Um, like there's a lot more competition per se.
Which means standards get higher
Yeah,
and
standards get
expectations
higher.
get higher.
Like Born Again season 2 is fine right now, but compared to like it's not doing as much as Invincible's doing right now. And this is coming from someone that just got done with episode 2 of season 2 of Born Again, and also yesterday, I think it was actually the day before yesterday that I watched the new Invincible episode. I'm not going to spoil anything in case anyone hasn't watched
I know what
Invincible.
happened. Continue.
Yeah, I know what happened, and I'm like, Jesus Christ.
But I think that is a good segue to get into the actual show. So, I don't want to. I'm not going to discuss Matt. We're going to discuss Matt's characterization at the very end of the Born Again discussion because I'm going to have a lot to say on that. So let's start off with the main plot point of Born Again because it's where a lot of the issues with the show goes on. So I'm gonna let you start off first, Shoto. How do you feel about the Mayor Fisk plot line and them
The
disrespecting
Mayor
Agent
Fisk
Nadine?
plotline, my thing with it is, I mean, I'm kind of fine with it. I just wish that it was kind of paced better because I kind of get
Absolutely.
the whole idea that Fisk is trying to, do this thing and then ultimately just kind of goes back to like still being the Fisk that we know. I just wish that it was paced better and or told a little bit more coherent because it just kind of comes across as like bro just has to sit in his office all day and he's just mad.
Yeah, he's cartoonishly
Um,
evil in that show.
Not really cartoonishly evil.
Or let me say the way they have Vincent D'Onofrio acting, like for instance in the finale when he's talking about shutting off the power grid, no, there will be no body cams, no due process, no warrants. I want the bridges shut down, and he's doing the whole thing with his arm and he's screaming like a madman. It's, like I get at that point he's just doing it for the love of the game, right? He is actively just fucking with Gallo.
Kind of reminds me of that, like, and this is going to be probably preposterous to say, but like, it's kind of like one of those. I mean, for me, I'm kind of thinking of one of those weird moments in the Netflix show where it's like, you could tell the budget was tight. Um, Not to say the Netflix show was bad, but there are a lot of moments where you can kind of already know that it was very tight budget. Granted, writing and acting fucking superb, but you can
Absolutely.
still kind of tell. Like, there's a scene where he's like bashing Matt up against the table. It was in what, season 2?
Yeah, when
He's doing
Matt
that,
was
but you could
when Matt
yeah, but you could
interrogated him in
obviously
the
tell
prison.
Matt
Yeah,
is just willingly going in, like slamming himself against the table as well.
yeah, the actor, yeah, Charlie Cox is
It's
doing
like
it. Yeah,
it's like WWE kind of selling. I find that funny.
yeah. I will
My
say, no, go ahead, go
Fisk
ahead.
over time in that show,
Mhm.
like obviously pretty much does it get, well, not does get to that point, but in that scene, yes, he pretty much kind of is. I feel like that's just because he's just mad that
Matt was
he doesn't
threatening
get the
Vanessa.
power that he wanted.
Yeah.
That, and also, well, Matt.
Threatening Vanessa. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. when discussing the Mayor Fisk, it's impossible to talk about the Mayor Fisk plotline without talking about the world building within the Born Again. And when it comes to the world building in this show, I think you'll agree with me on this. It's incredibly vague because
Yeah.
the thing is, the whole reason Fisk becomes mayor is that he's hosting an anti-vigilante platform. But within this point of the MCU, we are beyond the topic of vigilantism, and we're beyond the whole Civil War thing to where, should anyone have that kind of power? Because we're at a point where Avengers Endgame has happened, and it was through the Avengers, a group of, objectively, and they still say this in Infinity War, they are still a group of vigilantes who operate outside of the government. It was through them banding together that half of the universe was restored after, the borderline cataclysmic event with the snap. So at this point in the story, it makes no sense how Fisk was able to become mayor based off of a platform that wants to get rid of vigilantes, especially considering that the show simultaneously tells us that there are so few vigilantes within the city and that they're crying out for their return. So it's this weird, it's like one of the points I made in my T8 video, and there's going to be a lot of comparisons to make with Kazuya and Fisk and T8 because it's really bad. Vigilantes within Born Again are omnipresent enough to the point where the public hates them and the police hates them, and Fisk can become mayor off of a platform that opposes vigilantes. But then at the same time, they're also absent enough to where the public is begging out for vigilantes to return, and once Daredevil quits, in episode 1, then apparently they're so vacant in the city and they're needed. And Fisk becoming mayor also logistically is a complete nightmare because he's an unpopular criminal who bombed the city, killed several tenants who after he had tried to after he tried to strong-arm them out of their low-income housing. He collaborated with the Yakuza. He funded human trafficking, slavery. He manipulated the FBI. He manipulated the media twice. He framed a beloved vigilante as a serial killer twice. And these are all things that the public is aware about, as evidenced in episode 1, and yet they still voted for him. So in order to facilitate the Mayor Fisk plotline, we have to bend and break the world somewhat naturally to revolve around it. And obviously, this is where the defenders will say the whole Donald Trump comparison. So I'm going to let you speak your piece on that. What do you think about Fisk apparently being an allegory for Donald Trump? And that essentially being the only justification for why he's becoming mayor.
I don't think the comparison is there outside of them being criminals.
It's not. It's a false equivalence.
Yeah. Also, let me say this. I'm not gonna say what political side I'm on. I've already shoved that fence up like a fucking hole in the ground, and I'm gonna let it fucking stay there. With the Mayor Fisk plotline, I kind of get why they wanted to do it, just because, you're adapting a certain storyline and all that stuff. People would want to see that storyline adapted. But at the same time, yes, you do have to bend over backwards. And also, I will say this, people are kind of dumbasses with who they elect.
But when you compare that...
that's literally one of the only...
It's the only justification we get in the show. But if I don't know if you watched my T8 video because it was an hour long, because I covered the similar point with Kazuya and then why people were supporting G Corp in spite of him holding the world at gunpoint. When you tell your audience that the only reason that the main villain's plan succeeds is because everybody's stupid, that doesn't make Fisk seem intelligent. That just makes everyone else seem dumb. And and I can't speak for everybody, but for me, and especially in comparison to the Netflix show, when we remember how meticulous and smart Fisk was with how he was able to manipulate people and how he was able to manipulate politics and the system in his favor, that ruins the appeal of the Kingpin. Because he doesn't have to be smart or intelligent to get anything he wants. The world will just hand it to him on a silver platter. And it's interesting that the writers of Born Again apparently wanted to make a Fisk Trump parallel, because a lot of people don't know this, but if you watch the original show, real-world politics and the Mayor Fisk plotline influenced Season 3. And I actually have a quote here from one of the writers of Daredevil Season 3 regarding the Fisk plotline. I wanted to tell the story about the rise of a very powerful politician who controls the leverage of the government, who is a corrupt-to-the-core individual, and how one can fend off the rise of such a character. And that's a direct quote from one of the writers. But the reason why that plot line is acceptable in Season 3 And the reason it's not acceptable here is because if you watch Daredevil season 1 to 3 without that context, the story still functions. Everything follows from A to B to C to so on. You don't need to rely on it as a bulletproof vest for why Fisk was able to manipulate the public. Whereas in Born Again, you can't watch this as its own story. You have to go from it from the perspective that this isn't Fisk, this is Trump. And so everything in the story, it's kind of genius in a way, I will say, because the writers of Born Again, they don't even have to explore anything as to how Trump managed to become the president, and they don't have to explore any of that, because based off of the fact that they have Fisk being Trump, and they have him raging like a madman, and they have the anti-vigilante task force just being a stand-in for ICE, people of the show will watch this, and then they make these fucking hour-long video essays to where they pretend that Born Again is some deep and philosophical political commentary, when the show is just it's a lot less intelligent than what it actually think it is.
What?
Cook? What were you saying? I think he's might disconnected. Additionally, with the Mayor Fisk plotline, this is something interesting. Not only did he become mayor off of an anti-vigilante platform, he was also a write-in candidate. And this is something Daredevil Season 3 actually explains. A write-in candidate within a political spectrum is somebody who throws their hat in at the 11th hour. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But as I was going to say, I will say that that's pretty much 100% true, that people, especially on the political spectrum, will look at that plotline. And I kind of feel like the only reason why people try to justify this, I mean, again, it's one of those things where Born Again kind of needed more of a coherent answer to certain things. I mean, the same thing happened to the comics with Fisk being mayor. You could kind of also make the same argument that Fisk in the comics should not have become fucking mayor, considering.
I mean, yeah, considering the comics, he does a lot worse. And this is the issue that people.
I mean, man literally orders his own son to get murdered and tells his wife, "We could make another kid."
Yeah, no knowledge of the Daredevil series. Don't worry, we'll fill you in. But the thing is, this is the issue where people keep saying that in the comics, the Mayor Fisk plotline happened, right? The comics have a bunch of stupid shit that happens in them. For instance, Norman Osborn impregnated Gwen Stacy at one point just to fuck with Peter Parker. But just because that happened in the comics, that doesn't mean it should be put in a movie. And it doesn't mean it's well written. Just because something happens in the comics is not a bulletproof defense. Either A, and I say this all the time to people on Twitter, either A, there is context within the comics that makes it work within that story, or B, the comics are just as stupid. If I thought it was stupid in the comics, why would I think it's good in the show? Especially considering that this completely destroys the ending of season 1 to 3. Let's talk about Ray Nadeem and how the show explains how Fisk got out of prison. Because if Fisk is mayor, that gives us 3 important questions. How did Fisk get out of prison? Why does Fisk want to become the mayor? Why are people voting for Fisk? And the answer that they give us for why Fisk managed to get out, despite him being convicted on 5 RICO counts, racketeering, terrorism, human trafficking, slavery, all of the political maneuverings, all these different things, is because, and the explanation that the show gives us in the final episode of season 1 of Born Again is that the whole FBI corruption scandal, Agent Nadeem, all that, is why Fisk was acquitted. He got acquitted of all wrongdoing because of the FBI corruption scandal in season 3. The FBI corruption scandal that he caused. How does that even make any sense?
I couldn't really hear like that last bit coherently because fucking ear rape.
So
but yeah, I kind of got the idea that.
Yeah, but he got the point is he got convicted. He got acquitted of all wrongdoings because of the scandal that he's responsible for. Which doesn't make any sense. It also puts into question, how does this manage to get Bullseye out of prison? Because he was one of the corrupt FBI agents who was directly working with Fisk.
I think they kind of, well, I mean, I don't even mean to sound like a nerd here. They kind of should have just explained it, I think, more coherently again, because Vanessa throughout like the time period where Fisk was pretty much put away.
She was running, yeah,
It's
his
explained
criminal
like
operation.
it's explained in things in the MCU that she took over for a while. That's also where you get to see Fisk beating that guy who was trying to fuck his
Yeah,
wife and
Adam.
then screaming "Mine!"
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
yeah, dude, chill. So like it's like they tried to do all these mental gymnastics to try and justify getting Dex out of prison, and it's like, and I know I kind of switched topics here, but
Mhm.
like all you had to do was just say something coherent and people would have listened. I mean, fuck.
I mean,
Also,
well,
like,
compare him getting out in this season compared to how he got out in season 3, to where it took him all of season 2 to get out in season 3, and even then in season 3 he didn't get out of jail until episode 7. Somebody just said in the chat because in every one of their continuity he has lawyers. He's a stereotype of a filthy rich criminal. They didn't even use that.
this man's lawyers is like LeBron James level
No,
numbers.
genuinely, bro. Fucking Big Donovan is the best lawyer you could ask for.
It's like
Genuinely.
he just like he's got to do like some fucking Molochian ritual just to get Fisk out of prison.
But even setting aside how nonsensical the answer is for how we got out, it completely destroys the ending of season 3, and it makes everything that happened in season 3 pointless. Matt's crisis of fate was pointless. Of faith was pointless. Agent Nadim's sacrifice and his death is now pointless because his death facilitated Fisk getting out of everything he was convicted of. And if the law is so broken to the point, we're going to touch on this more when we get to Matt. If the law is so broken to the point where Fisk can get, free because of a scandal he caused, then that means Matt has to kill him at that point. The no-kill rule doesn't work. It's not an option. Because he didn't even have to manipulate the system at this point. They just decided to let him go. And nobody cared.
They just decided to let him go because he like probably they probably will let him fucking go because Kingpin's big ass probably brought like the best kind of shit to them parties, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, but joking
Party
aside,
like a Fisk party.
Yeah, of course, I can't wait for that allegory in episode season 2. But the joke,
What? There's no titty allegory in season 2. Oh hell.
I was thinking of Epstein.
Oh no, they're not gonna do that either.
Yeah. But the thing is, what has ultimately happened as a result of them bringing back Fisk in the way that they've done, it's the exact, or the way that they did. Sorry, I misspoke. It has the exact same issue that Heihachi's return in Tekken 8 has, or Bison's return in SF6 has, or the Empire and Palpatine's return in Star Wars has, to where you've needlessly stagnated the world to such a point.
I don't think Bison's return is canon, considering he's DLC. I'm not sure if that's canon to begin with, because Capcom never really makes it clear on if a lot of DLC is canon anyways.
Well, for the sake of this argument, let's say that he is canon. You've needlessly stagnated the world, and nothing that happened previously matters. As we've gone over, and nothing, nothing within this show has any meaning. I mean, I do have to wonder if bringing Fisk in this way, down in the way that they did in season 3, didn't work. How are they going to bring him down in season 2? What's to stop them from just cheating the system again? But even then, all the sacrifices in the original show, all the lessons, all the pain, the suffering, we threw all of that out the window just so we can make a stupid ass allegory about politics. But even then, the Trump allegory, what did this even add to the story? Because they don't even explain, why people support Fisk, first off. And you were bringing this up earlier about how poorly paced the Mayor Fisk plotline is. We don't even see why people support him, or we never get a plausible explanation.
Okay, there was one thing. Okay, I will say this one positive that kind of came out of this was the whole anti-vigilante plotline, just because it just shows that these fucking people are blowing things way out of proportion. Then also more John Bernthal Punisher.
Yeah.
I do think that plot line was actually handled decently, mainly because of John Bernthal, and also the fact that these people are so misguided that they want to be like Frank so bad, but like it also kind of hammers home the point that Frank is not a good person, and you should not be idolizing what Frank does, because not even Frank likes what he does. That's actually like a one-to-one thing in the comics. Not even Frank likes what he does, but he pretty much is resigned to this "I have to do it anyways" kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the core of his character in the Netflix show. But you know, we
So
will
like,
get to we'll get to the character writing. But it's just a shame. Like after everything that the characters went through, after I'm surprised. Fisk might as well have Nadim and Nadim's family and Matt and Foggy and Karen killed at this point. As a matter of fact, because he got acquitted of all wrongdoing, he could have doxed Matt. He could have exposed his identity as Daredevil at any point. But this, of course, brings us to the many defenses, that being that people are stupid and Donald Trump and yada, yada, yada. Now, here's the thing about Mayor Fisk. No one is saying that there isn't an answer. There's no plausible answer for how Fisk can become the mayor, just that the one that the show gave us is incongruent with the original show. And, this brings us to the conversation of contrivances and coincidences within writing. I'm going to go on a similar writing tangent in part 2. So I'm going to paraphrase. I'm going to paraphrase here what I want to say about what I'm going to say in my Tekken 8 part 2 video.
hold on, I'm sorry to interrupt this. But,
Yep, go ahead.
My thing with it is, I think they explained how people saw Fisk as like suddenly like, yeah, I'll forgive you, is just because something to do with the blip. But the main issue is just the timeline, because okay, I could kind of excuse that because the blip fucked pretty much everything up. Okay, fair enough. But
You would need to
season 2
explore
takes place-
how. How did it fuck
Yeah.
everything up?
Like I think they might have explained that as like something to do with crime surge, but like also it fucked everything up pretty much because I mean in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, lots of people suddenly lost their homes and then regained it back, and those people lost their homes. Pretty fucking complicated. So like I could kind of excuse that because that was such a big event. Whatever. Of course it's gonna fuck over a lot of things in the real world. Whatever. But then season 2 takes place. I think it was like a week, if not, but like after Thunderbolts. So it's like,
We're
what's
way past
happening
it.
right now?
Yeah, and that's another issue with the world building. Because for instance, in the finale, Fisk shuts off the goddamn power grid. And this is New York. For one, there are several elected officials who are above the mayor.
Nobody can.
Yeah, there are several elected officials above the mayor, the governor, the military, the Supreme Court, which are directly mentioned in the show. First off, second off, there are also several superheroes within New York who would absolutely raise an eyebrow if you shut off the power grid and make vigilantism illegal and declare martial law.
Cough, cough, Luke Cage.
Where is Spider-Man? What is he doing? Where's Jessica? Why did Jessica Jones?
Sorry, we can't use him because.
Yeah, why didn't Jessica Jones do anything until season 2?
We can't use
Where are the
Spider-Man
Thunderbolts?
because Sony's allergic
Where's
to money.
Falcon? Why are they doing nothing? Matter of fact, I'm glad that you reminded me, because Hawkeye has video evidence of Fisk committing crimes, and he was one of the original Avengers. Surely he would have made a statement speaking out against Fisk.
I think the only way to excuse that, and you're gonna hate this, is just quite literally that Marvel just didn't want to use those characters. And I'm not even trying to defend this. It's pretty much just one of those
Yeah,
things.
it's a
I
meta
think that
reason.
every superhero fan has just accepted.
It's a meta reason, yeah. Yeah, I
It's
get
a meta
that.
reason. It's not their movie or
Yeah,
show.
so yeah,
why
I get
should
that's
it
a
be?
meme. But when it
That's
comes to
pretty much
the
it.
but when we hold it but you would also agree that since we're holding it to the standard of internal consistency, what came before matters, no matter how much issues it causes. from an this is where I use this word, and people are going to throw a fit because there is nothing objective. From an objective standpoint, because these characters exist in this universe, you have to explain why they're not here. It's the exact same thing I said during the SF5 stream. Hold on, Bison shut off the power grid to half the planet. Where is Sakura? Where is Cody? Where is Guy? Where is this character? Where's that character? And the same thing in Tekken 8. I'm going to say the exact same thing. We'll talk about it once we get to that game. Where is Lei Wulong? Where is Bob? Where are these characters? Why aren't they appearing?
Sorry to interrupt again. Mm-hmm. This is just a weird answer. I'm not sure if anyone in the comments knows anything Street Fighter lore-wise about this. Mm-hmm. What the, speaking of what was Cody doing, was he still in prison by the time this happened, or was he already acquitted by Hagar?
Yeah, exactly.
And then, because if he's in prison doing this, then, well, that would kind of explain it, because prisoner Cody just kind of acts of his own accord, and he doesn't really do anything unless he wants to, and then he just goes back to prison. But if it's Mayor Cody, then what the fuck?
Yeah, why would he do nothing as the world has a doomsday weapon held to their fucking heads?
To be fair, Cody in Street Fighter 4 didn't really care. He just breaks out of prison and hopes someone could actually make him happy, and then that doesn't work.
But onto the conversation of contrivance and coincidences. So, there's this thing I say in my video. It's going to be something along the lines of, when it comes to writing, right, or when it comes to creating a fictional world, there are certain things that, based off of what has been previously established, there are certain outcomes that should objectively be impossible to happen because of what you told me about the world. So, for instance, if Superman is in the room and there's kryptonite, Superman's going to be affected by kryptonite. That's not my rules. That is what the story has told me. That's what the story has consistently shown me. But when it comes to certain writers, those limitations are issues to them because it prevents them from getting a certain payoff that they want. And when it comes to writing and you putting your characters in certain challenges, and you have to take these things into account, limitations, again, aren't conducive to creating the outcomes that you want. So despite everything and every facet of the world and logic will tell you that certain things should not happen, but because the writers want it to happen in a specific way to get an ending that they want, they're going to force the world to break in some way, shape, or form in order to get that outcome. So, yeah, I actually think that the White Tiger case is actually a perfect case study of this, and of just what happens when you build your story off of contrivances and coincidence. So, let me lay out the groundwork for everyone in the stream chat as I begin to lose my voice. There's a man named Hector Ayala who's going on the subway platform on New Year's Day as two corrupt cops are beating up a random guy. And Hector intervenes to save the witness, but one of the cops falls onto the subway tracks, and Hector is convicted with murder in the first and second degree. Matt gets to Hector, and he wants to represent him, and the corrupt cops want to kill the witness, Nikki Torres. So Matt has to get to the witness first, and he has to represent Hector in court, and he has to prove that Hector is innocent. Now, obviously, it should go without saying, don't let the Daredevil profile fool you. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not that knowledgeable in American law, and I don't know.
I don't think anyone.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would assume that.
Yeah, and obviously Chodo is not a lawyer either. So we just go based off of.
My aunt was a lawyer, but I can't really ask her this right now because she's probably fucking working. I'm not gonna put her on speaker and be like, hey, well, what about this?
Well, the point is, we just go based off of whatever the show establishes. Mm-hmm. So Jesus, as I cannot talk, Matt needs to prove that Hector is innocent, and he needs to prove that he was committing self-defense. So, the first thing that should come to mind if you're going up against cops is body cams. Police body cams have become the norm, and in the MCU, body cams do exist. And they're directly mentioned in, I believe, episode 6 or episode 5.
Fisk already on his whole power grid rant mentioned that there's going to be no body cams.
Exactly.
They already do exist.
Exactly. So one of the first things that Matt can bring up is that the police didn't have body cams on, and are there any cameras on the subway? I don't live in New York City. I'm all the way down here in Canada, but I can tell you on the TTC there are cameras. Matter of fact, the mall that I'm working at right now, there are plenty of cameras. So if you need to prove that Hector is justified in claiming self-defense, which it was, then you should ask for any camera footage. But Matt doesn't bring this up. He also doesn't bring up the lack of police body cams. He also doesn't bring up, and this is something that Season 1 established, that when it comes to a court of law, the burden of proof of self-defense is on the prosecution to prove that the defendant is not justified in claiming self-defense. But this is something that he doesn't bring up, despite the fact that him and Foggy brought it up in season 1. He finally gets to Nikki Torres, and he has Nikki Torres on the stand, and Nikki doesn't give the testimony that he's supposed to give. He's acting out of fear. And it's not the first time...
You know, the fucking...
Yeah, the Punisher cops are there.
Yeah, the Punisher cops. They were going to tell him something if he didn't.
Yeah, but the thing is, this isn't the first time that Matt's been in a situation where he's in court, and his witness and the person on stand hasn't given the testimony that they're supposed to. He had a similar scenario in season 2, and there's one simple solution that he could have used, that he could have attempted, that he doesn't. I'd like permission to treat the witness as hostile, Your Honor, but he doesn't do this. And the reason that Matt makes all these leaps in logic, and the reason that he forgets how to be a damn lawyer, is because the story wants to have a dramatic moment in which Matt doxes his client in court, and he exposes Hector Ayala as the White Tiger. There's several things, as I lose my voice laughing, there's several things wrong with this. For one, it goes against attorney-client privilege, which is established in the show to be a thing that exists and should lead to a mistrial, which, again, the show actively lampshades itself.
Isn't attorney-client privilege, like, or maybe I'm getting it confused because therapists have a similar thing.
Anything that is said between the client and the lawyer stays within that room. Any confidential information.
Okay, because I was getting confused because, like, therapists have a similar thing.
Yeah, to where you can't tell them if you're gonna harm somebody or yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, or someone else. Like, if you're deemed as like a threat to yourself or someone else, then like, yeah, that client, like, that whole thing goes out of the window. The only reason I could even semi-defend this plot point is just because, they did not, they did not focus on the whole law plot point. It's pretty much just Matt being in denial. Because by this point, he didn't want to be Daredevil. And here he had to deal with a dude who's already a vigilante, and he's already on, you know, the stand and all this shit. So the only two ways this thing could have even happened, and sadly, it was pretty much the only way to avoid, like, a big prison sentence for Hector Ayala, is pretty much the only reasons why this thing even happens. It's just, one, Matt by this point does not want to be Daredevil, so he's trying to do all that he actually could, albeit, you know, not from the law standpoint. And two, it was either...
So you're arguing a character. It's a character motivation,
even though it's thing. And then,
even though it's immoral and objectively
well, it doesn't
illogical.
focus on the whole lawyer aspect. It's more on the whole Daredevil aspect. And two, it's sadly kind of the only way, because it's either Matt doesn't reveal this, and so Hector Ayala then goes to prison, probably gets unalived, and then two, he reveals the identity. He doesn't go to prison, and, you know, like, the system that Matt already put so much faith in tries to do something, and then we all know how that turned out.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Hector gets spawn camped, sadly.
I'm glad you brought up all of that because
Menendez, you know,
I'm glad you brought all of that up because, you know, I was getting into arguments with people on Twitter, but the thing is, there were several options that Matt had at his disposal. But the thing is, even if, you know, I'm glad that you argue that, you know, at the very least, it's illogical. I think you agree. It's illogical, but it somewhat, quote unquote, makes sense from a character standpoint. What people on Twitter argue.
By this point, again, Matt by this point did not want to be Daredevil, and he was trying to avoid this reality that, you know,
that vigilantes aren't needed. Yeah.
He was trying to pretty much avoid this whole thing about, like, himself needing to be Daredevil again.
Yeah,
Foggy died because,
yeah.
Well, you know, Foggy dies because he's Daredevil, and Dex obviously wants revenge and all this other stuff. He
was essentially,
even though Vanessa did her Snowbody brainwashing.
Yeah, it was him putting on his fears. You know, him placing, projecting his fears and all that onto Hector.
And then, not to mention, with the whole Hector Ayala thing, it's either he goes to jail, gets pretty much murdered in prison by
or he goes
free,
free,
put away, or, you know, he gets doxxed, but he doesn't go to prison, and at worst he would have to move away from New York and like everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, you say at worst, it's a lose-lose situation either
It pretty much
way.
is a lose-lose. It's Moloch or
Yeah,
Maul,
when
but it's
it's
like
a
which one are you
lose-lose
gonna choose?
situation, but the thing is, it damages Matt's character. Given that in season 3, we had an entire arc of the result of what happens when your secret identity is doxxed. Matt, Karen, and Foggy had to live with their lives, had to live looking with their shoulder over their back for the rest of their lives, and people act as if the only option was to dox Hector and how it makes sense because of this, and this. But the thing is, I had to break down to somebody in Spider-Man 1. We saw what happened when Norman figured out that Peter was Spider-Man. He went after Aunt May. He went after Mary Jane. You know, the mask
Hmm.
isn't just for you. It's for, to steal a quote from Batman. The mask isn't for you. It's for the people that you care about. So Matt not only endangered Hector, he endangered his entire family by doxing him. And on top of that, him going, because him going to prison, and people argue that, well, he would have been killed either way. It was through Matt doxing Hector that allowed the Punisher cops, the Punisher worshipping cops, because somebody asked what are the Punisher cops in the chat. They're just
So
a group
basically,
of. They're
yeah,
basically
I'll
just a group
explain
of
it.
police. They're just a group of
So,
policemen that worship the Punisher. That's essentially it. But
well, they're
it
not
was
really police.
yeah. Well, it's the simple term is they're assholes in positions of power who worship Frank Castle. That's in simple terms.
Yeah, so basically, they're a bunch of dudes who worship the Punisher, and Fisk basically made them his own little police.
His
The only
military
issue
force.
is that these guys lack any training, and again, they are really gung ho to take anyone's life, even a random ass teenager in the show, just for the love of the game.
Essentially.
They just
Yeah.
did this shit just for the love of the game.
Somebody brought up a really good point. Reven Knight said, "The mask is why Batman sacrificed himself at the end of Arkham Knight." Exactly, because it's
Didn't
the
even
mask
die
isn't.
in that movie.
Yeah, but the point is, the mask isn't for
Or
you. It's
not
for the people
movie.
you
I
care
was thinking
about.
of because you brought up the Nolan's shit earlier. I was thinking of what was it? Dark Knight. What was it? Dark Knight? No, Dark Knight Returns was with Joker. Which one was the one with Bane again?
Dark
It
Knight
was
Rises.
yeah, Dark Knight Rises. Also, I might be talking a little bit low because my dad is working in the office
Yeah, that's
today.
fine.
So, like I was gonna say, he doesn't, and also Arkham Knight, he doesn't even die there because there's a comic that quite literally ruins the ending of that game. But I'm not gonna rant about the
Well,
Arkham
the ultimate
verse.
point that hit the
If I want to
yeah.
rant about the Arkham verse, I would make a video on it.
Well, the ultimate point that he's making is that it's the reason why Bruce, quit being Batman, without with all the tech and the fancy gadgets, is because he got doxxed. That's essentially the point, and that's the same thing what Matt did to Hector. That's not what a superhero does. That's what somebody like Scarecrow or Mysterio would do. And it was through Matt doxing Hector that allowed the Punisher cops to set a trap for him. Matt played a key role in his demise. And the show at no point ever addresses that, and it bend over, like I said, it has to bend over backwards, and it has to ignore the mountain of options that Matt had at his disposal, and it tries to give us a character motive, that being, Matt's projecting his own doubts about being Daredevil onto Hector, but we'll get to that when we cover Matt's character and how well the show tackles that. But even then, Matt at no point contemplates his decisions. He never stops and thinks about how he got Hector killed. But when characters do things, and somebody said this in a video discussing Board Again, and it was a really good point. When characters do things that are evil or immoral, they should either be punished or they need to contemplate their decisions, right? When Raziel killed Kane in Legacy of Kane Defiance, he contemplated his decisions. As a matter of fact, he was punished for his decision because he got put back in the spectral realm. When Goku forced Gohan to go fight Cell, he contemplated his decision, and the series talked about why he was wrong in thinking that Gohan was ready to fight Cell.
I mean, yeah, even Piccolo literally tells him he's not like you.
Exactly. The show communicated that he was wrong. How we could use Netflix as an example. When Matt tried to kill Fisk, he was punished, and he was showed why he was wrong, and why he was wrong for letting that anger take him over. But in Born Again, there is no contemplation. There is no... the show tries to present it as if the limitations within the system. But even then, I also have to question logistically, how did Hector being revealed as the White Tiger even get him acquitted of all wrongdoing when this is a system that elected Fisk as mayor based off of an anti-vigilante platform? How are they popular to the point where how are they popular to the point where Hector can get acquitted of all wrongdoing and supposedly killing a policeman, but they're also unpopular to the point that Fisk can become mayor? This is what I mean by the world building. It's so vague, and it doesn't explain anything in detail. And I saw people on Twitter talk about how, we're criticizing the show unfairly, and how we discuss how fictional worlds need to be more logical than our own reality. But in a way, that's absolutely true. Worlds of fiction do have to be more logical because, unlike fiction, the real world isn't controlled by an all-knowing, omniscient presence. Real life is built off, it's random, right? It can be built off of cause and effect, not in the same way that a fictional world is. But I'm rambling a lot. But the ultimate point is that in a fictional world, the writer is in control of everything that happens. You are in control of how these events fit into place from A to B to C to so on. And so when one event doesn't fit with another event, it's difficult for the audience to understand what is happening. And there are certain rules and aspects of your fictional world that need to be adhered to. So in a way, a fictional world does need to be more logical than our reality. But, say that to somebody on Twitter, they're going to get in their fucking feelings because a lot of Born Again fans. A lot of Born Again fans.
We're talking about the same people who try to rationalize, we're talking about the same group of people on Twitter. Not specifically this, but I just mean people on Twitter. We're talking about the same people who will unironically use "it's so bad it's good" for
as an argument. I mean, we talk about this whole thing about Born Again being realistic, quote unquote. And by being realistic, I just mean they copy and paste whatever's happening on Twitter or on the news, and they put it in their show, and then Born Again fans make these video essays talking about it as some deconstruction of our society. But and obviously I'm no writer, but if you want to make your fictional world realistic, I'd say you don't have to just copy and paste real world politics. You just need to make the world feel lived in. Right. Just make sure there are people within the world who are affected by what happens, and that they don't easily forget the things that happened to them previously. And this is something that the Netflix show was really good about. That's really good at. Elena Cardenas' death at the end of season 1 wasn't forgotten about. It was mentioned in season 3. Wesley's death in season 1 wasn't forgotten about. It was mentioned in season 3. Matt and Foggy's conversation about him discovering that Matt is Daredevil, it wasn't forgotten about. It was a constant, reoccurring discussion between the two of them throughout the entire show. Do I blame the education system for how bad writers have gotten? I mean, maybe.
Maybe, but then again, it's also that movie Bob syndrome where, you just rot your brain with politics. That is a sad case if you actually look into movie Bob. It's not like anything super dramatic, but it's very sad when you actually watch, what was it, Magic Mush? When you watch his video, like, I would rather take cringe movie Bob that tried to copy AVGN than, like, uber political movie Bob. The same guy that, that literally wants eugenics, but that's beside the point. The world building, okay, I feel like they tried, well, I mean, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, but I actually kind of liked the whole BB report thing, just because it tried to add some
It tried to, yeah.
And tried to explore the people.
Granted, it didn't do it very well.
It just kind of went away after a while, but
I mean, ironically, the BB reports got more screen time than the actual character, But I mean, I guess that's a good segue because we've spent a large amount of this. We've spent the past hours talking about the world building of Born Again and how it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit with the MCU.
And also, here's my thing.
It doesn't fit with it definitely doesn't fit with the original show.
Here's the thing with it as well. Like, if anything, like, just have the other, like, Netflix characters. You don't even need to have Frank. Just have Danny and Luke at least do something. Like it's like this whole thing where it's like I get it, it's not their show, but at the same time, it's like, dude, just have them show up. Um, the other thing I will critique Born Again on, even though I am
Hmm.
kind of on here to defend a lot of the show, which I mean I am going to do a lot of
Yep.
that here, but I will
Especially
also give
once we
my
get
own
to the
critiques
character work,
because
yeah.
I at least also want to be neutral on the show.
Hmm.
The side characters fucking suck. Um, the only side character I even kind of like is what was his name? He was my
Cherry?
just no, not Eric,
Luca?
not Evie. It was the one kid that Fisk kind of brought up as a protege, but not
Oh,
really.
Daniel? Oh, God!
No, because here, okay, so I'm a big Sopranos fan, and that's James Gandolfini, the guy that plays
Yeah,
Tony
yeah, the
Soprano.
actor,
That's
the
his
actor.
son.
Oh, so you're a fan of the actor.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, he was in Many Saints of New York, and I'm a big Sopranos fan, so the only reason why I even care for that character is just because I'm a big Sopranos fan.
Hmm.
But outside of that, I mean, the only benefit I will give them later on is that at least in season two, they gave those characters personality.
Hmm.
Um, Probably won't last long, but at least it's something that's an improvement.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the side characters because we can actually get into, the actual character work of Born Again, and by character work, there's not much at all. So before we even discuss that, I do want to talk about this quote from Dario Scarpine. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but he's one of the showrunners of Daredevil Born Again. So this is a statement he made before the show had came out about the writing thought process of Born Again, and in comparison to the Netflix shows. In Punisher, one of our edicts was longer scenes. You had these long 5-page scenes of the characters hashing it out in order to make space between these massive action sequences. The way stuff has evolved since then, we're able to do big action sequences with at a lot more faster pace, and the scope of that, for a lot of reasons, Netflix wasn't able to do. In Born Again, there's a lot more fun there's a lot more fun in the moments with these characters, and a lot less navel gazing than before. We're even more grounded and even less stylized and even more rooted in the here and now. The Netflix show was at its worst when two characters would be sitting around in a room talking about what it means to be a hero. So that's the thought process that Born Again was made in. What do you think about that, Shona?
Um, okay, first of all, why do we need, and I'll say this, as much as and this isn't even a issue with Born Again, it's kind of an issue with all of the Netflix things as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
um, or better yet, just also a lot of other things. Why do we need more of what it means to be a hero when Matt's gone through this twice now, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
because of season three and also season one
Season
with
one.
Born Again, technically, if you want to get technical, yes. It's not like Peter Parker where he tries to drop his responsibility only to find out that he has to, he still has that responsibility. It's not like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not even like why do we need more reminding of what it means to be a hero when Matt's already gone through this arc twice? Same thing with Frank. In the Netflix show, he's pretty much gone through this what, like twice? And both times he came to the same conclusion.
So essentially, your issue is that they're not adding anything new to the table for the
Yeah,
character work, for the
like
character
here,
of Matt
don't,
and Frank.
yeah, like here, don't like here. All you really have to do is just add something new to it. Like, granted, Born Again did try to do this, albeit by Matt, basically being in denial that he would ever have to be Daredevil and that he would need the system to work, hence the whole actor IL thing. But that's about as close as you get.
Yeah.
And if anything, the scene with the Punisher, it's more of a reminder to Matt that he fucked up. Which is like the only kind of like consequence he really gets for the whole actor Ayala thing outside of
That's really
like
it.
what him interacting with Angela.
I mean,
But
I
like I
get,
will
yeah,
give,
that's the only
yeah, I will give them
consequence.
that.
But even
I
then, the
will give them that
Punisher.
at least.
Go
I will
ahead.
give them that. At least they actually tried to make it like it's Matt's fault because it pretty much is because Matt was like, I need the system to work, and then that's the same system that you know
That the show went out of its
left
way
it
to
for.
break. Yeah. But the thing is, the interesting thing is, one of the things that Netflix's Daredevil was praised for by a lot of people, is its character writing. Right, the Netflix show was great at fleshing out characters, and the thought process that the writers of that show had was that every character felt like, especially in season 3, every character felt like they could be the main character, right? It wasn't just Matt's story, it was Nadim's story, it was also Karen's story, it was also Foggy's story, it was Maggie's story. The side characters bounced off of Matt, and they made him a more interesting protagonist because they kept him honest, they critiqued him, the way they interacted with him, and the way that they challenged his morality. That's what made Matt such an interesting character within the original show. It was that navel gazing, which means to be self-indulgent. Those self-indulgent scenes in the original show helped us understand the characters and their relationships and their motivations and their strengths and their weaknesses. It is interesting to me that you're saying this about a show that is praised for its character writing and how you view the character focused scenes as navel gazing when you took the Punisher debate from season 2 and you tried to recreate it in Born Again. Like, what are you talking about? And then Scarpane had to backpedal and he said, well, no, the issue with those scenes is how long they went on for. But with all of that in mind... Go ahead.
I can't say they recreated it, because the whole thing with the rooftop scene in season 2 was basically it wasn't really made on a circle jerk of whose ideology was better.
It was just them clashing over their ideals.
Yeah, and then in Born Again, it's not really a clash over their ideals. It's more of Frank basically trying to, well, one, push Matt onto the edge.
Yeah, he's trying, which is out of character.
Well, I mean, Frank's done this before at one point in, the comics, but granted, just because it happens in the comics doesn't mean it should happen in live action. So it's more or less Frank basically trying to think that Matt is trying to get his hands dirty, and not to mention also here, I can't call it a clash of ideals because they're not clashing over anything. If anything, Frank is basically guilt-tripping Matt.
Yeah, he's trying to push him over the edge. Which is interesting because in
if anything, he's not really. Well, he's just more guilt tripping him because he's like, well, Foggy died because of your damn system. So like,
why do you even agree with this? Yeah, why even be in a system that got your friend killed? But the thing is,
I tried to do that. And look how I ended up. So why would you want to do that?
But even then, that doesn't work because in season 2 of the Netflix show, and the writers absolutely don't remember this. There was a scene where Matt and Frank were talking on. It was on the boat when Frank was hunting the killer of his family, the blacksmith. And Matt was like, you know what, Frank, you're right. My way isn't working. The system isn't working. We can't just put this guy behind bars. So maybe just this once, we do things your way and we take this guy's life. And Frank, despite being listed as a serial killer, he said to him, Red, you don't just come over to my side. If you come over to my side, there is no coming back. Because Frank respects Matt and everything that he stands for, even if he thinks that he's naive and even if he can't be Matt, he still respects him. And he doesn't want Matt to be like him. But with this thought process of writing in mind, it is indicative in the side characters. So now I'm going to have you play a bit more defense. Sell me on Cherry. Sell me on the side characters. Sell me on Cherry as a character based off of what the show establishes. Sell me on him.
Without even getting into some things involving season 2.
Just season 1. Just season 1. Sell me on him.
He's basically just Matt's guy on the inside, and that's pretty much it. He's just Matt's guy on the inside. And I can't really sell you a lot on Cherry, to be honest, because
they don't do anything with him.
Like, Cherry is honestly the weakest character in the cast. I mean, Buck is pretty much Kingpin's second in command. There's not a whole lot to really sell.
The poor man's Wesley.
Outside of the fact that Buck is kind of a little bit more of like, I don't know how to say it, but like,
he seems like he has a lot going on.
Not a lot going on, but he's pretty much just that one dude who, like, he means well, but he goes about it in like the dickish way, like the most dickish way ever.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know what? They should have just had Kingpin been mad at him because like. Buck is like, I mean, yeah, he's honest, but he's brutally honest. And I think that's the only thing Buck really has going for him.
Yeah, but
then
Cherry...
Daniel is just...
Oh my god.
Tony
He's
Soprano Jr.
Just bootlicking shit. The most insufferable character on that show. By far. I hated every scene with him. Kirsten and Cherry, they're not.
Kirsten,
They have nothing going
Kirsten.
on.
Oh, you think I'm a bootlicker? No, Kirsten is like the Fisk bootlicker. Even in season 2, she is a bootlicker. The only way they could have kind of fixed her character was by basically just making, well, one, quite literally, all she had to do was just, for her hatred of vigilantes, was just literally be on the
Wait,
receiving end of Matt's shit.
wait. You're
But she
thinking of
wasn't.
Heather.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking of Heather. I said Kirsten, his new law partner, not Heather.
Okay, my bad. Because I just don't like this character Heather. I'm sorry. I want to talk.
No,
about this
we'll get to
character.
her. We'll get to her. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Bootlicker, bro.
No, we'll get
She's
to her.
the
We'll get to her.
bootlicker.
We'll
You
get to her.
forgot
Don't
who-
worry. No, but
Oh,
Kirsten,
bro,
Kirsten and
she's the
Cherry.
bootlicker.
Kirsten and Cherry for now.
Kirsten doesn't really do a whole lot. They have, like, there's an interesting thing there. It's just never elaborated on because they try to have Cherry have more screen time, but like, no one cares because it's Cherry.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed you barely have anything to say. You can't do this with the
'Cause
original
Cherry is
show. Can't do that with the original show.
It's like Cherry. I mean, again, like the only reason why these characters kind of exist, and I kind of get this, is just because Karen, fucking, I get it. Fuck.
Yeah, because they wrote Karen out because it was pre-overhaul, so she was out of the show, and Foggy, fucking died. So.
Yeah, and also not to mention that, Foggy again is dead. Karen is, very well with Foggy.
Yeah, pre-overhaul. Yeah.
But if you're gonna like write these characters, and again, I'm glad season 2 did this, was at least give them a personality or give them something else to work with. Like, you're telling me you couldn't work with Cherry, a guy who, believes in the law, seeing the law be used in a bad way by Fisk and the AVTF. I almost said AVGN.
Yeah, the Anti-Vigilante Task Force. Yeah.
Like, you're telling me you couldn't have that arc actually mean something. Like, oh, Cherry. And granted, with, like, the Netflix show, I will say this, though, and this is probably just my little lack of, I'm a little bit more knowledgeable on Daredevil on the comic side, but, like, compared to the show, Ben Urich doesn't really get a whole lot. And I only kind of remember Ben Urich just for that scene of him and Fisk that everyone memes on for some reason.
Yeah, the Ben Urich versus Fisk, but yeah, but I compare how little we learn about these characters compared to what we got with Foggy and Karen in episode 1 and 2. You had, that navel gazing, right? That the head showrunner of the show hated. It gave us so much. In episode 2, there's a really great conversation that Karen and Foggy have about how Karen, she sees the city falling apart and how she doesn't feel safe in Hell's Kitchen. And she sees nothing but darkness and nothing's getting better, everything's getting worse. And Foggy tells her in Josie's bar, he introduces her to a bunch of the regular, attendees at the bar, and he talks about how they end up doing a lot for the community. And how ultimately, while Hell's Kitchen is an ugly place, and it is a dangerous place, and it is where Karen nearly died, there are still good people in there. Which speaks volumes about Foggy's character. He sees the good, he sees the good in everyone, despite their exterior. Despite how awful things get, there is still good. And on a larger thematic scale, it represents why Matt ultimately fights for Hell's Kitchen, despite it being despite it being an awful place, because there are good people within Hell's Kitchen. And it ties into something he tells Claire within that same episode, to where, I know you're afraid, but you can't give in to the fear, otherwise people like Fisk win. We learned all that about those characters in the first 2 episodes. That is infinitely more than anything we've had to say for Cherry or Kirsten. But everything wrong with the Netflix show. Not any of the bad writing with the hand, not the Elektra plot line, or sometimes the contrivances. No. The real issue with the Netflix show, ladies and gentlemen, was that there was too many scenes of characters talking to one another. Yes, this is how we get shit like Tekken 8. By the way.
I kind of off topic here, and I'm sorry to kind of go off topic. Not going on another Heather rant, I hate this character.
We all
It,
do.
that, you know what? I'll say it. As much as I hate this character, the writers did a good job. Because if you hate this character, then well, you pretty much they've done a good job. Because my God, I hate this character. But off topic, kind of hate this like way of thinking that just because characters are talking means that this thing is bad.
Yeah.
Like because talk like characters talking, yeah, it seems like talking, but you get to learn a lot about these characters. Like for example, there's a like obscure movie with Matthew Lillard and Sean Astin, and while the whole movie is essentially just people talking, you learn so much about Matthew Lillard's character and Sean Astin's character. So like through dialogue, yes, we would learn a lot about characters. Same goes with any show. Even in Loki, you learn about the characters through the dialogue. You learn a lot about Mobius through the dialogue. You learn about this universe's Loki,
Hmm.
even through the physical scenes and the dialogue.
Yeah, it wasn't also, and something that Scar Payne completely missed. It wasn't just the dialogue scenes; it was also the scenes of which characters taking action. Karen was a very
Mm-hmm.
proactive character, and the core of her was, discovering the truth and fighting for what's right. Because of she was wronged by the system and the injustices that happened to her, and obviously everything in season 3 with her dark past. But her and Ellison, Mitchell Ellison, her boss from the New York Bulletin, they became connected over their mutual grieving of Ben Urich, and them recognizing Karen's talent for fighting for honesty and fighting for what's right. Those characters had so much to do in season 2. You could have done something similar with Sherry, because he's a private investigator. He has to go out and find this information. But we got some of Karen's best scenes in the original show. But again, I honestly, the writers of Born Again, they don't understand what made that Netflix's Daredevil good to begin with. They just it's the meme of y'all got good writing. No, we got hype and aura, and we got punching and screaming. That's
Bad. Try being a COD Zombies fan.
yeah, that's Born Again in a nutshell. Is just punching and screaming.
Oh hell no!
In
Because
season
dude,
1.
COD Zombies is no, because COD Zombies is ending
Hmm.
like throughout, like in like the other modern stories, were way worse. I'm talking ending doesn't matter because themes and such.
Hmm.
Like we're
My
like
themes.
at least in at least in Born Again, it made some characters like at least it actually tried to do something different with certain themes you'd already seen before. The modern zombie stories were just kind of throwing things at the wall, seeing what worked. At least with Born Again, there were some things that could have been expanded upon, but they tried doing all these loops to try and be like, when like all you had to do was just explain something simple. With the modern COD zombie stories, there is none of that. They're just throwing things at the wall, hoping people ignore it. But that's a side point.
Yeah.
That's like an off-topic thing.
Now we can get to Heather. Oh my god.
I guess the way that I'm saying it is, while Born Again may not be the best, there's obviously going to be way
There's
worse.
worse, yeah. There's worse, yeah. I mean,
And
I'd
Heather,
I'd say I'd say the Flash TV show is worse than Born Again. Obviously Dragon Ball Super is way worse. Is obviously on a larger scale. It's more
kind of
offensive
prefer the
than
manga.
Super.
I kind of prefer the manga.
Yeah. But the anime version of Super, absolutely, it's worse than Born Again. But now we can get to Heather.
The worst character in the show.
Oh boy,
The
just
worst character in the show.
man,
Sherry has
just
a lot of the show.
I
A
don't
lot
know
of the
where
show
to
now
start
that
with this.
a lot of the show. Now that I'm kind of thinking about it, um, a lot of it is kind of like they had decent ideas, but they didn't really go
The
like,
execution.
fully. Yeah, and for that I say you could kind of excuse some of that. Heather, no. This character only exists to be the trope of the girl that dates the superhero but hates the superhero.
She's
This is
arguably worse than Amber was in season 1 of Invincible.
Oh no, Amber was worse because it's like, how are you mad at a guy for saving his best friend? Like you're mad that he was saving people or because he didn't focus on you.
Well,
Heather
we
was
got we
just
got that,
Heather
but I
was
mean,
Heather was
that's
just
bad.
mad because Heather was just mad that Matt didn't agree with Fist on anything. Okay, like all they had to do with Heather's arc was quite literally make her at least be a casualty in Matt's whole Daredevil thing, and that would have made more sense. They kind of try to play it off as Muse traumatized her, but like she clearly wasn't. I mean, she freaking like blew his head off, so she clearly wasn't that scared of Muse to begin with.
Hmm.
And then also, she quite literally only exists for one purpose, and that's it. Heather has no character outside of like bootlicking Fisk, and also just being mad at Matt for no reason. They could have done something interesting with this character where, again, she's a casualty of Matt's whole Daredevil thing, and then she just grows to, hate vigilantes because of trauma. But, like, that's not there.
I mean, something interesting you said was that how Heather doesn't have a character, but that that's a description of pretty much every single side character in this show. They either don't have a character, it's a shallow character, it's a character whose their character doesn't make any sense because of the established world building and what's been in the previous show, or in the case of, as we get to Matt, it's their character is incongruent with the original show and actively destroys it. And in the case of Heather, nothing about her makes sense. But the first few episodes, they do nothing with her, but then they just, like you say, they make her the most insufferable, bootlicking character you could ever imagine. And the often defense that this is used by born-again fans is that she is traumatized because she was attacked by a vigilante, quote-unquote, even though Muse is not a vigilante. But, we're going to set aside how the writers of Born Again don't understand the English language and what words mean. She was attacked by a vigilante, and therefore she thinks Fisk is a net good for the city because he's hammering down hard on vigilantes. So now you can do something interesting with that, because as you recall, when I was doing research for my Tekken 8 video, and I was comparing Kazuya to Trump and certain things with why people would vote for certain politicians and yada 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 yada, you brought up the discussion of how some people vote based off of the lesser of two evils, right? Yeah. So even if they're wrong objectively,
this guy could be,
yeah.
Like, for example, if I had to choose between like two evil ass people, like for example, if I had to choose, like, fuck it, let's just say I had to pick a, I don't know, an electee of a country, and I was stuck between fucking Conquest or William Afton. I might as well go with William Afton, even though I know he's terrible.
He's not as bad as Conquest, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah, not as bad as, the guy with the mustache who destroyed pretty much all of Chicago.
But even then, there would be nuance. The point is, there would be nuance to the discussion. So in a more nuanced story, Heather would acknowledge that, yeah, ultimately, there are vigilantes out there who do mean good, but ultimately, vigilantism is a bad thing because of this, and this.
Because of the law.
Because of the law. And while Fisk is a criminal, and while he has subverted the system in his own favor to shield himself from consequences, he's offering us this, and this. And within my team.
Yeah, what they could have done with Heather, since she's a psychologist, is quite literally have Heather try to
view it from a psychological, however, whatever the word is, you know what I'm saying?
Sociologist.
Yeah.
Trust me, I have to deal with people who cannot pronounce certain words, so I have to kind of say it for them sometimes.
Yeah, deal with the psychosis of vigilantism. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's her perspective for supporting Fisk.
She could have had at least Cherry has an arc in season 2.
And he understands why he's wrong.
Yeah. Well, that, and also, like, the whole thing, what I'm getting so far is that he's not as good as he used to be.
Mm-hmm. So, like, he has to pass the torch.
Basically, kind of, but, like, it's an old guy basically realizing he's not cut out for this anymore, but he will still try to do his best.
But the thing is, with Heather, you actually could have tied it in the show, because one of the ideas that Born Again brings up is, the idea that Fisk wants to change, even if they go against that, theme.
To be fair, Fisk had that arc throughout.
Yeah, I know, through Echo.
Hawkeye. And Echo, and then like that whole thing with Echo happens.
Yeah. And that kickstarted his whole mayor campaign. Yeah, I understand that.
I think Born Again tries to touch on that. And to be fair, could have used a little bit more good writing. But
yeah.
But I'm fine with that. Because, we get it. We've already seen this in Hawkeye and Echo. whatever, right? Like I could kind of excuse that whole thing with Fisk. If anything, I don't want to compare it to this arc because
Hmm.
this arc was 1,000 times way better in Godfather 2. The way someone actually kind of said it better was that, if anything, instead of a Trump allegory, Kingpin was kind of more like Michael Corleone in the sense that he tried to be legitimate and all this other stuff, but then things kept getting in the way, and then he said, you know what, fuck this.
Yeah, but
Albeit all of
ultimately,
that is thrown away in the third Godfather movie,
yeah,
but
but ultimately
let's
the
not talk
point
about
is
that.
you could have tied it into the show, and you could have had Heather make the argument that yeah, while Fisk has done this, 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 and this, he is ultimately trying to change for the better, and would also open up the discussion about manipulation and and it would tie in with the original show with Fisk's ability to manipulate people and to make them agree with his viewpoints or make them see him as ultimately good for the city in spite of the things that he does. But again, that's if you cared about nuance or if you actually cared about telling a damn story. But instead what we get is Heather hates vigilantes because she had one bad experience against a quote
If
unquote
any, you know
vigilante
what, they could
who
have,
isn't even a
they could have,
vigilante, mind you, because
yeah.
and this ties in with the whole Trump allegory because vigilantes are the ostracized minority that within the context of Born Again and how they're treated unfairly by the powerful government and that's vigilantes in this show. They're the minority. Fisk is the government. The anti-vigilante task force, especially in season 2, was just ICE.
I mean, quite literally.
Yeah, and it just doesn't have the sauce.
I'll just say this: as much as I don't like a lot of bits of the writing, I'm more comfortable with other parts. Um, I will say this with the season 2 version of the anti-vigilante task force, they pretty much did the best job of making these guys unlikable because they know some guy on Twitter is going to probably
Yeah,
try
like
to
I said.
marginalize them.
Yeah,
Those
it's
two
like I
did a good
said.
job
It's
making
like
those
a
characters unlikable as shit.
Yeah, it's like I said at the beginning of the stream. They don't have to actually be clever or touch on, tell you yes, fascism is bad, but they don't tell you why it's bad or how people can be affected by it or
The
any of
only
these
way
sorts of
they
things.
call, I mean, in season 2, it's kind of more, well, not, well, it's more subtlety as to, or not really more subtlety, but there is a little bit more explanation as to them basically being like, why this is bad, because the AVT, like, or whatever the fuck,
The
the
vigil,
AT&T,
the
fuck it,
task
I'm gonna
force.
call
Just
them
call them the
that
task
now,
force. Yeah.
saying fucking
The,
AVTF is like,
the task force. The task force.
I'm
The
just gonna
military
call them
task force.
Punisher
Whatever you want to
cucks,
call them. The
because I'm
Punisher
not saying
cucks.
them,
The
try
cucks.
saying the cucks.
Yeah, the Punisher cucks.
They probably would, but at least with them, they do a lot more things to try to explain why these people are bad. Like they beat up this random guy at a bar in front of a bunch of people for no reason outside of him maybe being on the ship. They take people, they literally try to execute a kid and pin him as a vigilante for a petty crime.
Yeah,
This
I
dude was
saw
like
that in the
innocent.
finale. It was ridiculous.
Oh no,
Dude,
in
don't even get
season
me
two,
started on the whole fill a hole scene in episode 2. My God,
that's what she said.
filling a hole like this is not rocket science.
Filling a hole, Vanessa. Filling your hole is not rocket science.
But
But
yeah,
at least in season
overall,
2, they like season 2. From what I'm getting, is this what they should have done a lot with season 1? Just give a little bit more explanation to things. You already have decent plot points, albeit could use better execution.
but I mean,
But with the AVTF, again, these people are very petty people that don't have training, look up to the worst person you could look up to. Yes, I'm gonna say that. And they take people out of their neighborhoods just so they have an excuse to do their job.
yep. But yeah, I mean, we overall this side cast doesn't have the sauce that the original cast did, and I
Well,
imagine
yeah,
that.
because
But it's like
the original cast, again, they told you pretty much everything you need to know about these people and
exactly
why they connect to Matt.
how they
Well,
connect to Matt and how they connect to Fisk.
the way I could kind of simplify this, what you were talking about it, um, is, and ultimately, I was still fine with Born Again. Is it obviously going to live up to the original? No. Do I like certain things about the show? Yes. Um, if anything, Born Again is more Matt's story, whereas the Netflix show, despite it being, his, superhero name, Daredevil, it's kind of everyone else's show.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Whereas
like I
Matt
said,
is
that
more focused on, well, meanwhile, Born Again is more Matt focused, if anything. Granted, in season two, it's a lot more focused on the other characters, more than Matt.
it had
Also,
it
you'll
had a
probably get
balance.
annoyed at this. There is a slight error where Matt says he was under Stick's training for years.
Yeah, yeah, I remember seeing that discussion on Twitter. But
But then, well, like also Netflix Stick is just a dick.
yeah,
Like,
but
I'm sorry, but he's just a dick compared to the comic version. I will always prefer comic Stick over like Netflix Stick, but that's just me.
yeah, but overall, I mean, the show, the characters in this show don't have the.
Don't have that much
Hold on,
sauce. Like, as much
give
as
me
I would
two
want to
seconds.
defend this show, I'll kind of like continue my thing here. Um, like, I'm sorry if I keep interrupting and all that stuff. I just have a lot to say on a lot of things that I might be passionate about or not. Um, Again, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you, Soul Edge or Daredevil. I'm sorry to keep doing that. Again, I just have a lot to say on certain things, and again, that's my fault. But with Board Again, as much as I would want to defend certain choices by kind of saying things weren't executed well, or there's a little bit more subtlety, or at least other things, I cannot defend these side cast because they don't really have that much character. Even though I like the actor who plays Daniel because I'm a big Sopranos fan, I can't really say much about him as a character outside of the fact that he kind of seems to want to do good, but is just enamored by the life that he could live. Not really a whole lot. And like the side characters fit Matt's story well because they all connect to Matt's story in a way, whereas everyone else is kind of disconnected from Matt's story, whereas they could serve Matt's story. Cherry could easily fit Matt's whole law story. And better yet, to kind of go back to the worst character in the show,
Heather.
yes, like I am a proud Heather hater, and I will forever stand on that.
I mean, but like you
Like
compare the characters.
they could have had an arc with Heather where she tries to like talk with masked individuals or anything like that, or even people like going through things that make them think that they should become a masked individual, only to pretty much come to this conclusion, kind of like
Yeah, that
basically saying
anyone
which each
who
new
wears the
discovery or
mask is
each
that
new experience, it just gets worse.
yeah.
They could have had that.
Yeah, I mean, but the conclusion that Heather reaches that anyone who wears the mask is fundamentally insane, because of her experience with Muse. But you think about the side characters in this show, and you think about how badly written they are. It's like you compare them to Agent Nadim in season 3. There's so much you can say about Nadim as a character, and he had so much going on with how he interacted with Matt and how his story tied into the overall themes of the show. And these characters are given so much screen time. Heather in particular, she's given a lot of screen time, unlike Kirsten, and nothing's done with her. But it's not even just how much screen time they're given. And this is something that people conflate. Oh my god. I'll be
They
right
should have
back.
done